Good morning, everybody. I'm sure most of you know by now who are watching the real news that there is a massive problem kicking off in the Netherlands, which is because of the government's insane policies on climate. Which they're implementing in the Netherlands, which is part of a wider global as well as EU push to reduce emissions, as they say, for the climate. And what they've done in the Netherlands is the government has said that farmers have to cut nitrogen emissions. Well, as a chemist, someone with a chemistry degree, who was a chemistry teacher for a very long time, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever because nitrogen is part of the atmosphere naturally. It is the largest percentage gas in the atmosphere, 78% of the atmosphere all around us is nitrogen. I assume what they mean by cutting nitrogen emissions is cutting compounds of nitrogen, such as ammonia or nitrogen dioxide or dinitrogen tetroxide, and perhaps in the water cutting nitrates, which can get into the water after you use fertilizers, because of course, many fertilizers, all fertilizers will contain nitrates. Many of them contain ammonium nitrate, which you put on your crops, and that gives them nitrogen as well as potassium and phosphorus that they need to grow faster. But when it's done, water comes at the end of the season, whatever, as it goes on. Some of that will then get into the rivers and so on. That's just inevitable if you use NPK fertilizers on your crops. But what the Dutch government is particularly doing is targeting livestock farmers, particularly farmers with cows and dairy farmers, etc. So what they're saying is that they're the biggest nitrogen polluters. Again, I assume they mean by that nitrogen dioxide and so on, and ammonia gas getting into the atmosphere rather than nitrogen itself. But they are requiring all farmers to reduce their nitrogen emissions by between 12 and 90% by the year 2030, which means that all of the Dutch farmers who are livestock farmers will have to cut their herds by up to 90%, which of course means that it's completely not viable for many, many of them. And at least 30% of farms will have to close. And they're putting in a regulation that says, well, if they don't that, then don't do that. Then of course they will come with enforcement and requisition their farms or take their cows and slaughter them anyway, which is an act of absolute barbarity, economic and barbarity, of course, to the animals itself by the government, all in the name of climate change, net zero, sustainable development, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. It's all the same shtick that's going on all over the world. So after 2 brutal years of lockdown, now they're coming out with this hardcore climate agenda and destroying small and medium-sized farmers with their climate regulations on the top of the lockdown regulations of the last 2 years. So the farmers are protesting, and I wish them all the best in fighting this insanity from the Dutch government, which is just implementing EU regulations such as the Europa 2000 scheme, which is to reduce livestock and the nitrogen emissions in certain areas that they want to rewild, and the Water Framework Directive, which is one of the most far-reaching directives ever implemented by the EU. I'm very glad that the UK is out of that and we can make our own rules, providing that we actually get wise people in government who will take us out of these things and do things for common sense in the UK. But in the Netherlands, they are really going to war on farmers. They want no livestock farming, it seems. They want to destroy livestock farmers. whether they're dairy farmers or whether they're beef farmers, or maybe sheep farmers as well, because underneath it there is a war on meat. And I hear as well that one of the ministers that is responsible for making this decision has a very, very large investment in one of Bill Gates's Frankenmeat companies. So they would be happy, of course, the ministers who are implementing this, to destroy real food, real meat farmers, so that we all have to eat Bill Gates's Frankenmeat. That's the future that these insane New World Order psychopaths have for us, or they want us to have. So the Dutch farmers are now on the front line of fighting the New World Order, and I support them 100%. It's going to be tough in the Netherlands, because what they're doing is blocking food distribution centres, ports, the main airport in Schiphol, the border to Germany, and so on. And supermarkets are running out of food. But that sends a message: no farmers, no food. The government wants to destroy the farmers so the Netherlands won't have any food by 2030, when these things come into effect, and then there will be less and less food going up to that date. What the farmers are saying is, look, get rid of these insane climate regulations, which aren't going to do any good at all. Dutch farmers are the cleanest in the world, and they actually do try to reduce emissions and have high quality food, as farmers in the UK do as well. The government is just picking on people who have done everything they possibly can to adhere with their green agenda already, but this is a step too far that's going to destroy them. This is the government making war on the people, on small businesses, medium-sized businesses, farmers. They're making war on meat. They're making war on our choice to eat as we want to, as we always have done for thousands of years, to bring in this synthetic, hideous world, which is not going to be the utopia that they present it as, but it's going to be a jackbooted dystopia. We don't want it, and we're not going to have it, I think. Congratulations to the farmers. And this will happen all over the world if they try to bring this in other countries. But like over the last 2 years, it seems to be what they're doing is they're just testing this out. You saw over the last 2 years, they would push a bit in the UK, then move back, and then push in Australia and move back, push in Canada and move back, and Israel or France. Now they're pushing ahead and trying something out in the Netherlands. They're going to try out a bit of their climate agenda and see what the reaction is, and see if they can get away with it. And if the people push back, then they will have to step back on it. So this is what's happening. The people are pushing back. The people are supporting the farmers, because outside the green echelons of the parasite class in the Netherlands who want to implement this, well, they're not going to be affected themselves, because the parasite class will have enough money to buy themselves some real meat, while everybody else eats Frankenmeat. Just like you remember in the 1980s, the dictators of Eastern Europe fell, and after decades of people not having hardly any good thing to eat, they saw in Ceausescu's palace, for example, in Bucharest, he had the finest meats and the finest wines and cheeses and so on stashed away in his fridges and freezers and pantry, eating in great finery, while everybody else in the country starved on very poor nutrition and the rations that they had. This is what they want to bring in the Netherlands. It's what they want to bring in everywhere, but the people are not going to let that happen. But we don't just need to defeat the regulations. We need to get rid of the parasite class, which is putting in place these regulations and causing chaos and damage and psychological damage and harm to ordinary working people all over the world. So all strength to the arm of the Dutch farmers.